the explorer of anomalous places, continued. The beginning is here, the explorer of anomalous places. The old wooden doors swung open with a nasty, ear-splitting creak that echoed through the corridors. I paused on the threshold, looking around the spacious lobby with high ceilings. The air was stale and heavy. Now it smelled not of freshness and dampness, but of dust and some nasty drugs that somehow resembled the smell of a hospital. The walls were papered. They had long since become damp, hanging in shreds, exposing black spots of mold and gray cracked plaster. The floor underfoot was made of tiles, but it was almost invisible due to the layer of dirt, glass fragments, and pieces of collapsed paint. I took a step, and the silence was broken by the loud crunch of this mess of garbage under the soles of my shoes. Just in case, I looked at the anomaly detector. There was 0 on the screen. It became a little calmer. There was a massive wooden reception desk in the center of the lobby, covered in a thick layer of dust. An old TV with an empty dark screen lay overturned on the floor nearby. A little to the right was a wide arched opening in which a long central corridor could be seen. Its end was lost in the darkness. Picking up my phone, I took a third picture and then stood and listened. Nothing. Only the oppressive silence. Okay, I said softly, and my voice sounded unnaturally loud. There were a couple of important things to do before moving on. All this dust and mold obviously didn't add to my health, so I hurriedly put on a respirator, breathing in the familiar smell of cloth and filter with relief. It also seemed to me that the headlamp was getting worse, so I replaced the batteries in it. After that, you could continue on your way. Every step echoed loudly throughout the building. I tried to walk more quietly. I was looking for places under my feet where there was less trash, but it didn't help much. Walking up to the opening that led to the main corridor, I looked into the distance. The lantern really began to shine brighter, but the beam from it was still lost somewhere far away, which made the corridor seem endless. Yellowed papers, glass vials, and half-rotted rags littered the floor. The doors on the sides leading to the rooms and other rooms caused a little concern. Some were slammed shut, others were open or ajar. An old couch could be seen ahead, left against the wall. Blackened rags that had once been bedding or someone's clothes lay in a shapeless clot on it. I walked slowly to the open door of one room and looked inside. An old iron bed with pieces of rotten gray cotton hanging from it instead of a mattress. There was a worn bedside table nearby. One drawer was missing and the other was slightly ajar. A dirty chair was lying against the wall with peeling wallpaper. At that moment, rustling was heard somewhere on the upper floor, and then a glass knock with a brief rolling sound. It was as if one of the jars or test tubes had fallen to the floor, but it didn't break, but rolled, gradually stopping. An animal? Or is there something sagging in the building? Thoughts were racing in my head. His hand groped and squeezed the pepper spray in his pocket. "That's it. It's good already. You're a fucking coward," I whispered, trying not to give in to fear. After all, I've been to so many places, and I've seen so many things. And rats, and stray dogs, and even wild animals. And now what? The number 1 on the fake device flashed for a moment, and I immediately shit my pants. No, that's not the case. I managed to motivate myself and reduce the anxiety rising in my throat. The unknown scares you the most, which means you have to go there and find out what's going on there. After all, I've been stuck here for 6 hours anyway. Slowly and carefully, I moved forward along the corridor. There were no stairs at the entrance. Perhaps it should be a little further away. I looked through the half-open doors to know that there was nothing anywhere, and nothing was threatening me. Soon, a passage to another corridor appeared from the side, stretching into the distance. But I chose to follow the main one. In the end, I finally managed to get to the end of it. Behind the old door, which hung crookedly on only one hinge, there was a staircase to the top. Each step echoed with a loud, alarming creak, which made me freeze, trying not to make so much noise. The pepper spray was now constantly in my hand, ready for instant use. And so, I kicked the half-broken syringe off the aisle and found myself on a small platform. I was on the second floor. The ceilings were lower there, and the air, felt even through a respirator, had an incomprehensible sweet smell. The light of the lantern illuminated the corridor, disappearing into the distance. I moved slowly forward, checking every room along the way. Not only were there no animals anywhere, but there were also no bells that could make that sound. When I got to the next door, I tried to turn the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Is it jammed? My first thought. I tried to turn this knob one way and the other, hard and soft, but nothing came out. Okay, I whispered, and was about to move on when I suddenly heard a sound. Something in that locked room, perhaps one of those bottles that came across earlier, rolled and lightly hit the wall. I froze, listening to the silence, interrupted only by my breathing through the protective mask. I wanted to check the stupid detector again. When I took it out and turned it on, I felt a cold sweat run down my back. The screen read 5. A second later, 6, then 7. Every second, the number increased, and when it reached 10, it began to grow at an alarming rate. The numbers began to flash so fast that the number almost immediately became 3 digits, and soon 4 digits. The staggeringly loud wooden thud made me almost jump in surprise. It sounded somewhere in the depths of the building, and at the same moment, the screen of the anomaly detector went out. I stood motionless and probably as pale as a statue, with my eyes bulging in horror. My heart was pounding and seemed to want to jump out of my chest. With an uncertain movement, I pressed the button on the detector to turn on the screen. But it didn't turn on. This otherworldly Tetris was no longer functioning. "Fuck your sanatorium, I'm leaving," I said quietly, and headed back to the stairs. According to Rule 5, if there is activity, you have to leave, so that's exactly what I decided to do. Trying to make as little noise as possible, I walked to the exit of the building. The steps made me a little nervous again. I kept listening, but so far, everything was calm. When I reached the front doors, I hurriedly pushed them open with my hand, already planning how I would go through the forest. But they did not open. I tried to kick the doors open with my shoulder, then with my foot, but it was no use. They didn't even move. Not wanting to give up quickly, I threw a few more furious punches at the castle area, but it didn't help. It's a fucking accident. And now what? I muttered, catching my breath. According to paragraph 7, if it is impossible to get out of the object, then you can use the emergency button. But then a logical question arises. What will she do? Will he call 911? Will he send a complaint? Or maybe it will detonate, removing the only unnecessary witness to the paranormal. I didn't want to touch her yet, especially considering that something unhealthy was starting to happen around her. Such a building should have other exits. We just need to find them now. You can also pull the bars on the windows, in case you manage to knock them out or bend them. After all, they are already many years old. Maybe it will work out. But there was something else to check first. I reached into my backpack and took out the file they gave me at the office. I usually always looked at the rules before going to the facility, but they never changed. I already knew them inside and out. Thinking that I wouldn't see anything new in them this time, I didn't look at them for the only time, and in vain. These rules were slightly different from the ones before, but the most important thing is that I have already violated them. 3. Do not enter buildings. 4. Do a detector check every 15 minutes. At the slightest deviation of the readings from 0, immediately leave the facility. I got angry at Anton, who, instead of directly telling me important information, mumbled something about not communicating with anyone, and then dumped me. And read the rules. Was it difficult to say that they are different this time? I barked into the void with displeasure, and who could I start talking to here, with flasks? I wanted to grab the fucking detector, throw it at the wall, and watch it shatter, but I pulled myself together. I had to get out. All this hate was definitely unnecessary here. Deciding to check all the options, I went to the nearest window and looked at the bars. Although it was rusty, It was also very solid. If you can knock it out, then you can safely sign up for powerlifting competitions. Grabbing the bars, I tried to shake the grate, but it was useless. Kicking her was also impossible to get through. It seemed that it was easier to break the concrete wall on which this grid is supported. Catching my breath, I stopped and looked out the window. The gloomy tree trunks behind the metal fence looked slightly ominous, and then my eyes caught on something in the night forest. I looked closer and saw the silhouette of a man among the trees. He was wearing something light, but he was standing too far away to see the details. "Hey!" I shouted and started banging on the bars. "Hey, I need help!" He didn't react to my screams in any way, and he didn't move at all. I tried to look closer and get a better look at him, and a lump formed in my throat. I had to make sure that what I saw now was just my imagination. With trembling hands, I began to take out my phone, wanting to look at the uninvited guest through the camera zoom. Looking out the window at the forest again, I saw no one. Whoever it was, he's gone somewhere. Of course, I wasn't sure, but it seemed to me that this man was standing there with his mouth wide open, and without moving, was looking at me. At that moment, it became difficult for me to breathe, and everything turned cold inside. Well, that's it. No panic, I muttered to myself. I needed to calm down somehow. I took out a thermos of coffee from my backpack and took a couple of sips. It got easier, but not so much at all. I have a spray can for self-defense, and if the ghost dancing starts, I'll press the emergency button. What can I do? Picking up my phone, I wanted to look at the photo of the building that I took before coming here. That would be a better way to assess the situation. Another surprise awaited me. There were no photos of the sanatorium on the phone. The last 3 pictures taken in the last 2 hours showed a forest. I scrolled through all the albums, searched in the basket, in other folders. But apart from those, I found nothing. In terms of time, they just coincided with the moments when I photographed the sanatorium. What is this anyway? My voice trembled slightly, and when I tried to analyze it all, my hands started shaking too. The first picture was of this building in all its glory. I lifted the camera of the phone to film it entirely. What we have now is a picture of the forest, but from the same angle, the camera looks straight up and slightly upward. The second photo was of an overturned cart and scattered bottles. The second picture now shows grass and tree bases. The camera is pointing downwards, as it was then. The third picture was the same story. They're all taken from the same angles, but instead of a sanatorium, it's just a forest in the photos. Goosebumps went all over my body. I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead. Back then, it seemed strange to me that there was no road or path to this place. And now I've seen it. Fucked up, I gasped, refusing to accept what was happening. Especially remembering that before that, when I reviewed the pictures at the time of whether they turned out well, everything was fine on them. It took me a while to come to my senses and stop glassy-eyed at these photos. I wanted to check other details as well. For example, the time. It was 1:37 on the phone. 1:37 was also 10 minutes ago when I was going to look at a silhouette among the trees. I remember entering the building at 1:25. If you think logically and try to correlate everything, then 1:37 is about the moment when the detector died and the knock sounded. But you can't trust just one watch, so I took the second one with me, a mechanical one. When I took them out of my backpack, I saw that they had also stopped at this point. The second hand was twitching, as if trying to move forward, but something wouldn't let it. A smile appeared on my face, and an involuntary nervous laugh rang out. I took the recorder and turned on that recording when I entered this building. The recording showed the sound of the wind and the rustle of leaves. There was no hint of my voice. My legs gave out and I sank onto the dusty tile, leaning back against the wall with peeling wallpaper. The cold from the floor cut through my pants, but at that moment, I didn't care. It turns out that the problem is not that there is no sanatorium. The problem is that I'm not with him. Thoughts were racing through my head, one worse than the other. I had no rational explanation for this and could not have. I don't know how long I sat there, but the noise brought me out of my stupor. It came from that long hallway where I was looking for the stairs. Something was approaching from there, clumsily rumbling on the floor. In fear, I turned off the flashlight and froze, trying not to move and breathe as quietly as possible. Soon, it had already crawled into the lobby. It was almost completely dark, and it was impossible to see anything. But I heard it. It moved in jerks, tapping unnaturally on the floor. It felt like someone was trying to crawl, stepping on the floor only with their elbows and knees. When it moved, glass fragments and pieces of paint flew everywhere, which stained the entire floor. This something crawled to the middle of the lobby, then came up to the counter. There was a hideous groan with a hoarse sigh, and I heard an object fly into the far wall and shatter. Maybe it was that old TV. After that, the creature suddenly stopped. Her hoarse, quiet breathing could be heard. The debris beneath her crunched as if she were turning or bending over. Then she crawled towards me and stopped nearby. During her last steps, several tiny fragments flew at me from the floor, which hit my face. She was very close. At one point, I could physically feel her breathing, a barely noticeable movement of the air. She must have turned in my direction. It was an unpleasant, nasty smell. It smelled of blood and something sour, like it smells in old damp basements. I held my breath so as not to accidentally attract her attention. After that, the creature moved towards the entrance doors, crawling past me at a critically close distance. I felt a slight breeze caused by her movement, which made the hairs on my head stand on end. Just a little more, and she would have grazed my shoulder, and then I probably wouldn't have had time to apply either the spray can or the emergency button. And I doubt that a canister would have helped at all. Stopping at the front door, she let out a terrible hoarse moan again, which sounded more plaintive than threatening, but it obviously didn't make it any easier. I was already at my limit. Sweat was pouring down, and my whole body itched from exertion. I had thoughts of trying to escape quietly, but I pushed them away. Right now, any wrong move could be my last. Finally, the creature went back into that corridor, and its stomping gradually disappeared into the distance. If it's impossible to get out of the facility or your life is in danger, use the emergency button, flashed through my head. Use it only as a last resort, I whispered faintly. It fits. I carefully felt for my backpack, which was lying on the floor next to me, and put my hand inside, trying to find this button. The devil knows what she'll do, but what does it matter now? It's unlikely to get worse than it is now. Somewhere in the distance, there was a rumble in this building. The emergency button was already in my hands. I carefully removed the safety glass and, hesitating for a couple of seconds, pressed it. Nothing happened. No flash, no hum, no click. Absolutely nothing. I was in the same darkness, in the same filthy place, and I was holding this useless box in my hands. I laughed soundlessly and whispered, "Probably a message with a short text has just arrived on Anton's phone. My pussy." It's a cool button, really. I continued to sit on the floor in the dark, listening to the sounds. There was silence again. My head was racing with thoughts about what to do now. My mind was still trying to find a way out and escape, but I didn't want anything anymore. In this situation, everything was meaningless. Time passed, and nothing happened. From the accumulated fatigue and stress, I didn't even notice how I passed out. When I opened my eyes, it took me a moment to remember all the horror I had experienced. It was morning. The sun's rays, breaking through the curtain of branches and leaves, fell on the damp grass. There was only the forest around. The sanatorium now seemed like a terrible dream, a nightmare, the things I never wanted to remember again. I was lying on a damp clump of grass and shivering slightly from the cold. What? I tried to say it out loud, but only croaked in a hoarse voice. It looks like I have a cold. An open backpack and an emergency button were lying on the ground nearby. In order not to freeze completely, I had to take off my wet clothes. The waterproof jacket was relatively dry, and I threw it over my bare torso. I didn't have any spare pants, so I just twisted them up, trying to squeeze them out as well as possible, and then put them back on. After packing all my things into my backpack, I tried to figure out where I was and where I needed to go. Remembering about the photos, I opened the first one. There were several trees visible on it. Checking the picture, I managed to find the right place. At the moment when I took this photo, I was facing the main building, so you could roughly tell where I came from then. After a while, I was already walking back to the car. I looked at the forest around me, doubting what had happened at night, but at the same time doubting that I had gotten out of there. The wet grass glistened in the sun in rare places where the shade from the trees did not fall on the ground. Birds were singing nearby. Stupid thoughts came into my head that I was crazy, that I just inhaled too much mold and caught a hard trip that continues to this day. I tried not to think about all these grim outcomes and idiotic theories, focusing on getting out of here. The main thing is that I did not stay in the sanatorium. Along the way, I came across that fallen tree, and it became clear that I had chosen the right route. In less than an hour, I got into my car, which was parked at the highway. There was no limit to my joy. I got out, damn it. I got out of this nightmare. The first thing to do was go to Anton's office, give all their stuff back, and say goodbye to them forever. I'm afraid I won't survive a second such contact with the paranormal. When I entered the city, my phone rang. I was standing at a traffic light and looked to see who needed me there. Sonia was visible on the screen. What? Who is this? I muttered and answered the phone, putting it on speaker. I had no friends or acquaintances with that name, and I certainly don't remember creating such a contact on my phone. Hi, what's up? A cheerful voice came from the phone. Did you go camping? How's it going? What kind of trip? I asked in a hoarse voice. You must have got the wrong number. Your jokes are usually funnier, Max. He chuckled. You haven't been in touch since yesterday. He went into his forest and disappeared. We're kind of worried about you here. Why do you have such a voice? Did you catch a cold? Who's we? I still thought it was some kind of mistake. How does he know about the forest? I haven't told anyone about this at all. Maybe they want to divorce me. Me, your sister, and Mom. My sister called me 3 times yesterday and again this morning. You're kind of weird. Did anything happen to you during your camping trip? No, it's cool. I'll call you back. I dropped the call and stopped the car at the mall. I was wondering who this Sonia was, why he was already logged into my phone and pretending to know me. First, I looked at the call history. My heart began to beat faster, and a shiver ran down my spine. Starting yesterday and earlier, I quite often talked on the phone with the contacts Sonia, sister, and Mom. They called me, and I called them. What the fuck? I whispered. In reality, my mom has been dead for a long time, and I've never had a sister at all. There were thoughts that maybe it wasn't my phone, but this Sonia just got it all mixed up. But something was wrong. For some reason, my friend Sariga's contact was not on the phone. I've known him since I was a kid, and I knew the number by heart. I dialed the number from memory and waited. I wanted to talk to someone I know. Wrong number dialed, came from the receiver. I checked the number several times. There was no mistake about it. At that moment, Mom called me. With a shaking hand, I pressed the green button on the screen. Hello, Maxim. Hello, came her joyful voice. A voice I haven't heard in over 10 years. How are you? Ah, hello, I stuttered and couldn't really say anything. Are you okay? Excitedly asked from the tube. Did you catch a cold? I'll call you back. I dropped the phone, which fell into my lap. Tears began to flow down her cheeks. I grabbed the steering wheel with my hands and looked at them all. There were brands on the signs that I had never seen before. There were many models unknown to me in the parking lot among the familiar cars. What have you done? I groaned, staring into the void. The phone, which was lying face up on my leg, vibrated and made a short notification sound. I looked at it and saw a message from Mom. Call me back as soon as you can. I'll be waiting for the call. I took a deep breath. I needed time to process all this. The phone rang again. This time, the sister wanted to hear me. "Wait a minute, everyone," I whispered, trying to ignore the call, and closed my eyes. The phone rang 2 more times, but I didn't even look at it. After sitting like this for 10 minutes, I started the car and drove to the office where I used to get assignments. Along the way, I noticed how much the city had changed. There were others in place of some houses, and it was as if there had never been any. There was a furniture store where there used to be a park. Brands and things I didn't recognize were advertised everywhere. There was also no sign of the usual over-the-top advertising that used to pour out of all the cracks. When I arrived at my destination, I was not surprised to find a vacant lot instead of an office building. It seemed that Anton no longer existed, as well as their entire office. Or me for them, it depends. In the evening, a few days later, I was sitting in a cafe, drinking coffee, and scrolling through the news on my phone, learning more and more details about this new world. It was necessary to get used to it somehow. I have already called all my friends and relatives and talked with them, reassuring them that everything is fine with me. All that remains now is to calm down yourself. I'll probably look like a madman who escaped from a mental hospital if someone finds out my story, who came from another world through an anomalous sanatorium that never existed. It would be as stupid as possible to tell someone everything that happened to me in all seriousness, but it would be quite normal to post it in the format of a horror story. I guess I'll do that, at least let people watch. The year is 2025 then. Okay, I'll get used to it. I sighed softly and took a sip of coffee. A few minutes after I posted my story, a new message arrived on my phone. "You have violated rule number 2. It is forbidden to show or distribute photos, videos, and other data obtained at the facilities.